meeting together, so I think we're getting close to getting ready to go. It's Labor Day weekend. We've all survived the summer. I think it's official. The writer of Hebrews tells us, let's be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. A kingdom that cannot be shaken. We have all received that, or I hope we have all received that. If we have received that, then let us rejoice. Let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. For our God is a consuming fire. Would you please stand as we worship?
We
ask that you would help us to set all of our feelings aside so that we can focus on you. We are so grateful that your greatness reflects in your love for us. All this we pray in your precious name. Amen. Please be seated. Ushers, would you come forward? We're going to receive our tithes and offerings. There are several ways that you can give. You can give by putting money in the basket. We also have the PushPay app online, and we also have the ability to pay just on a regular payment. So check out all of those. One of the things that astonishes me as I get to know the Nazarene church, as I get to know each and every one of you, is how giving you really are. And the Lord says that we are to give with a grateful heart. In Acts, Paul tells us, in all things, I have shown that by working hard in this way, we must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord, how he himself said it is more blessed to give than to receive. Have you failed, or has our sound guy just helped us out?
Red. Took a guy to do that. Well, last week, Pastor talked about this month we're going to do something about old people, and so then I went in and said, well, I have this idea and it has to do with old people, and he said, good, would you announce it? So I don't know if I'm taking that personal or not, but anyway, I have a quiz for you this morning. Does your yard look like you need the goats to come over? Does Tarzan refuse to fly through your trees because there's too many broken limbs? Or do the children in your house refer to one of the parents as that person that leaves their laundry there because you work so much? Or forget your name? Or finally, he threatened to put a rope around my foot and yank me off at my time. I'm hurrying. When it snows this winter, are you going to pray for the Lord's second coming because you and a snow shovel just don't get along? If you answered yes to any of those, then I need to introduce you to Anthony. Anthony, come on up, Anthony. Or, yeah, just wave, that's fine. Well, please bring your hat up and show us your hat. You can be the model while I talk. All right. Anthony and I are both talkers. Aaron would even get a sermon in if we both talked. Okay. Anthony is just a few weeks into a business called Ants. Is that cute? A little Ants Lawn Care Plus. You got, is it on your shirt?
No, I was gonna have somebody else show that up, but that's okay.
Okay. He has a passion for a spin-off on the first business that he hopes to get started in January. And this is the month that we're talking about old people, and I'm an old person. We're going to talk about both of his businesses. But why is this a church thing? Because we don't advertise businesses at church. You know, this isn't what we're about. Well, Anthony made some mistakes in his early life. Anybody here relate? Anybody make mistakes? Yeah, okay. Well, and God got a hold of him in prison. And if I could use a fishing metaphor, the bait God used was love and forgiveness. And God reeled him in, and God cleaned him up. God doesn't have a catch and release with people. He cleaned him up. And so if you, are you a fisherman?
I like to fish.
Okay, I just thought of that anyways. If you want to talk to somebody enthusiastic about what God can do, Anthony's your guy. He started working for me 2 weeks ago for Jim and I in our yard, because we qualified. And he's got God's love just coming out his pores. I mean, he's a good guy to have around. And I didn't tell you, Anthony, but he's got his own job list on my fridge now. So, yeah, I'm keeping him busy. But back to us and why we're doing this. It's our chance to come alongside brothers and show him some of God's love. Call him up, which he's going to give you his phone number. Call him up, ask him to do some work for you. Give him some money. It does come down to that. And he's all business-like. He's got a bill for you and all that. But, you know, I brought this, and I'm not even using it. But his second passion, he really likes old people.
I do.
Yeah.
That's why I like students.
Bless your heart, Sonny. What he's going to want to do has a passion for, in this old people thing, is doing the same thing that he's doing for free for business. Yeah, because I'm paying. The same thing he's doing for his business, he wants to do for free for limited income old people. You know any of those? You know, that really just have trouble getting the bills paid. Well, Anthony loves to help, and he would like to go to their house, help them with their yard, walk away, say, God bless you, and not charge them, right? If I got doing right.
100%.
Okay, good. I listened to you yesterday. But here's how we can help. My sermon only has 2 points. I'm moving right along. Point number 1 was hire Anthony to do your yard work or cut, you know, whatever, trees, whatever. Hire Anthony. Anybody can do that. Call him, hire him. Point number 2, to help him get started on this next business where he can reach out and help people, we're asking you, can you get 3 things? You can either give him a tip when he works for you, because that tip goes into the free jar. You can work out a deal with him to give him your cans and bottles. He'll do the dirty work of standing there and going like this, which I absolutely hate, so you're on with me. Or else, if you have, if you've got gray hair and are no longer using your yard equipment or tools, you know, the yard tools and stuff, donate them to him, so he'll increase his inventory. Okay, so the 3 things: hire him, give him a tip, give him money. You got way too much money laying around.
We got it. Okay, what I meant by the cans is, I don't want a million cans in my backyard. I have to be able to help people, so I only have limited time, only 24 hours in a day. So if you want to, if you would like to save cans and then cash them in and then donate it to it, that's what I meant. But that's okay.
Okay.
I spend more time turning cans in than actually works.
I'm so embarrassed. Anyway, so that's our 3 things you can do to help with the second item of this sermon, which is his senior ministry.
ministry. I think older people ministry to me.
All right.
Okay.
All right, I gotta get the Susan show off the stage there. Hey,
Oh, my joke yet, you want to
Hey, this is for the seniors, okay? Has anybody heard the joke about the hearing aid? I'm sorry, this is it's hilarious.
Hey, I've got to walk personally with Anthony, and it has been a tremendous blessing. If you spend any time with him, you're going to be encouraged, and you're going to want to give more because you won't be able to keep up with it. And so if you can get involved with what he's doing, I would encourage you to do so. Tessa, I think you're up, and that's going to be a tough act to follow.
I don't have any jokes or anything funny either.
I don't really feel funny all the time either, but sometimes it just happens.
Hey everybody, today is the day that we need you to stop in one of these foyers and sign up for Grandparents' Day visits, which are happening next Saturday and next Sunday. And the directors of the homes that we talked to mostly chose times between 1 and 3 o'clock. So we would like you to stop at one of those sign-up sheets, leave your name and your phone number, and if you could just write AM or PM, there's 1 AM time on Saturday morning at 10:30. So if that one works best for you, please be sure to write AM. And one of the group leaders is going to call you to figure out which of those times works best for all of you. We learned that the residents of the facilities will really like candy and homemade cookies and root beer floats. So if you could think about bringing one of those, that would be great. Also, the stewards just met on Thursday, and we were talking about all the talented people in our church, and we are hoping that some of you with talents like writing unicycles, or writing poetry, or singing, or doing skits would come to find one of us stewards and let us know that you would like to offer those talents at one of our visits, just to give the residents of the nursing homes a little something extra to look forward to. So, sign up in the foyer, your name, your phone number, AM or PM, so we know who's going to call you, and please see one of the stewards if you are brave enough to volunteer to sing or dance or recite a poem or ride a unicycle. I'm looking at you, Patrick. That's it, so thanks so much.
All right, so about a year ago, Pastor Eric asked me if I would intern here at the Hermiston Nazarene Church, and I have learned so many things that have surprised me. And this morning I've learned that apparently traffic control up here is also the responsibility of the pastor. Hey, this morning we're going to be in Philippians chapter 1. We're going to be looking at verses 12 through 18. If you're digital like I am, go ahead and turn on your device. If you're old school, go ahead and open up your Bibles. But we're going to spend some time looking specifically at that passage. Pastor Eric also asked me to let you guys know that Pastor Michael has accepted the position and is going to begin the process of moving out here and coming to work. And often as we're going through the hiring process, we think, all right, we've got a candidate, we present the position to the candidate accepts the position, and we're ready to go, but that's not the case. All of you who have been diligently praying for this process, I just want to encourage you to continue to pray. We've got a family now that is going to move across the United States, set up a new household, find schools, find doctors, find mechanics, and also start a new position with very few friends. And so please just keep them in your prayers as they go through that process. All right. Philippians 1, verse 12 through 18. Would you please stand with me as we read from God's Word? I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. The later do it out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaimed Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. Jesus, you are without blemish, the burnt offering presented on my behalf of the Father's free will. I confess that I deserve to die, acknowledging that this death has been transferred to you. Your blood was poured out and your life completely consumed for my sin. You were required because I am not enough. And right now I place my hand upon your head and know that my sin has been counted among those that have transferred to you on Calvary. Forgive me, Lord, and thank you. In response, I offer myself made sinless to you. All of me and everything that I know, including this work today, is yours. I pray that you would anoint it with your Spirit, that you would set me aside, and let the hearts in this room hear from you and not from me. Your justice is eternal, shall never be put out. In precious name, amen. Please be seated. It's Labor Day weekend. One of the pastors that I got to work under, he always had the congregation stand as he read the word at the beginning of his sermon. There are three things that I'm grateful for. One is the soldiers that have gone before us and fought for the principles that we hold dear. The other are you and our families, those people who have gone to work diligently so that we could have the advantages that we have. That's Labor Day. And the last one are those people who went ahead of us and died in some cases so that we could read the Word in our own language. And that's why I ask you to stand when I do this. So this morning I want you to imagine that you're Paul. It's the conclusion of your third missionary journey, and you are traveling back to Jerusalem, carrying an offering that has been raised for Jerusalem's need. Jerusalem is your home. At least that place where you feel most at home. You are approaching when you see a friend coming to greet you. Nathaniel, it is good to see you. You hand him the offering, and Nathaniel takes that offering and he sets it aside. It is clear he's not as happy to see you as you are to see him. We heard of your actions, Paul. You have thrown off the ways of our fathers and are encouraging your brothers to ignore the law. You look to your friend Trophimus. Turn to the person sitting next to you and say, "It's good to see you, Trophimus." Took me a while to pronounce Trophimus. Trophimus is a Gentile. He'd been traveling far with you. The eagerness and excitement of delivering the much-needed help to Christian brothers in Jerusalem is gone. He knew of the conflict between the Jewish and the Gentile believers. He knew that apart from circumcision, there were some in the church that would never accept him. He looked back to you with apprehension. You plead, "Nathaniel, how can I convince you of the truth?" And so you make a deal with Nathaniel. You will pay for the offering of some Nazarites who couldn't afford the offering themselves. And you will stand in their place as they go through the process of making their Nazarene vows. So 7 days later, you are at the temple, offering those sacrifices for those Nazarites. Surely this will show Nathaniel that you knew the law to be fulfilled and not abolished. It wouldn't be long now, and you could sit down peacefully with Nathaniel and discuss the topic with him. Now maybe he will hear you. Outside, though, you hear a noise. Departing the temple, you find a crowd that is shouting, and in the midst of the shouts, you hear your name. There he is! Seize him! He is the one who has brought a Gentile into the inner court. He is teaching you to ignore the law. They grab you and pin your arms behind your back, and not gently so. Your head is bashed several times, and your nose now feels as if it might be flattened against your face. Your ears are ringing, and you can taste blood as you gasp for air. Where is Trophimus? You squint to see, blood and sweat stinging your eyes, and are disheartened by what you find. It appears that all Jerusalem has come out against you. But then the crowd quiets. It even begins to shuffle and move a little in response to something just outside of your perception. And then you hear a familiar shout. No, a bark, a soldierly command. Tens, no hundreds of soldiers approach. holding you. And their leader announces himself, I am Alias Vitalian, your tribune. But you already know who I am. What is the meaning of this? The man holding you releases you, and you drop to the knee, and with all your remaining effort, you force yourself to stand. 2 centurions bind you in chains, heavy chains, the coarse iron grinding against your newly acquired bruises, reminding you of your discomfort. The tribune asks you something, but you can't hear him. The crowd has resumed their shouting. Some are demanding your death. Others are demanding a search for your friend. The 2 centurions who bound you in chains pick you up and carry you towards the steps of the barracks. You know that on these steps you'll have to make a defense for your life, a plea for justice. But that justice won't be granted you. This is the journey that will see Paul arrested, bound in chains, falsely accused, before and by the people he loves. He will be transported all the way to Rome and placed under house arrest, chained to a Roman guard to await the charges brought against him. In Philippi, the church is concerned. What will become of their brother? And all the way from Rome, Paul will write to encourage them. Would you have written to the Philippians? Or like me, would you have been waiting for a letter of encouragement from them? Today, I don't know what you brought with you, but in whatever situation you find yourself in, I can confidently say that you can encourage your brothers and sisters. No matter the circumstance, you can rejoice just as Paul. Paul found his purpose in the gospel, and that purpose transcended the situation in which he found himself. Today, we need that purpose more than ever. So we're going to take a look closer at Paul's situation here, and we're going to find 5 things that hopefully can encourage us today. The first one is that you can advance the gospel, no matter what your situation. Verse 12, I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. What had happened to Paul? Paul was in the trenches. He had been in the trenches since the moment of his conversion. Near the end of his 3rd missionary journey, Paul was returning to Jerusalem, and he was bringing an offering to Jerusalem. While in Jerusalem, he was accused of allowing where Gentiles were not allowed to be in the temple complex. As a result, he had to appeal to Caesar, and now he was waiting in Rome under house arrest. But adversity wasn't new to Paul. He'd received 40 lashes 5 times. He had been beaten 3 times with rods. Once he was stoned. He was shipwrecked 3 times, and often he was hungry and cold. Now he was at Rome, and he'd apparently been there for some time. His long imprisonment was probably due to his waiting for the charges to be brought. He would not be heard until the charges were compiled and brought to Rome, and in the meantime, he had to wait. The Philippians loved Paul. Not only had they sent him money, but I think they had even sent their pastor. And you're going to have to forgive me on this one. Epaphroditus? Under house arrest, you still had to pay for your household. You still had to buy food. You had to pay your bills. You just couldn't leave. And so the Philippians had not only sent their pastor, but they had sent money so that Paul wouldn't have to worry about that. And Paul is writing in this passage to thank them and to address some of their concerns. Rivalries and ambition were present among the Philippians. Judaizers were advancing their agenda. The law was once again being pushed into the forefront of their convictions. But before he got to that, he wanted to remind the Philippians that God had a purpose for Paul. And Paul was in the trenches for the gospel. Now, when we think of the trenches, the term comes from World War I. And I hope Heather is listening, because I've got to thank her for Sarah and I's now binge through Downton Abbey. We have just gotten through World War I, and some things have changed. But we have difficulty considering the trenches, the horribleness of that. So when I say Paul is in the trenches, I want to think of something that we can relate to. And it's football season. And so when I think of the trenches, I think of the line. Writing for hermnaz.church, Dan Larson writes, "The trenches are not for the meek, the faint-hearted. In that 1 yard long area of the field, big boys like Paynet's 6'4", 270-pound senior offensive tackle, Tower Manning." How do you like that name? Tower Manning. Bang helmets and pound pads, leaving each other battered and bruised and sore the next morning. Then they do it all again the next week. Also that the quarterback, running backs, wide receivers and linebackers and defensive backs can do their jobs better. Now, I played football in high school, but as a senior, I was 100 pounds. And so it was hard for me to find a position that I could contribute. But I wanted to play. I loved the game. Once my brother even told me, all you got to do is hit him harder, faster, Aaron. And so on one particular kickoff, I took off and ran as fast as I could, and when I hit that big guy, I just flew farther back. And actually, it hurt me more than him, I'm pretty convinced. But inside, my chest beat the heart of a warrior, and I envied the linemen the most. Not because there was any glory there, but because they had Arab soldiers about them. They were resigned to their fate, and the only way you could share camaraderie with them was to resign yourself to that same fate. It's the only thing that they respected. Larson continues in his article, "It takes a blue-collar mentality and no concern at all for who gets the glory. In fact, usually it's your hard work, your blood, your sweat, your dirty hands, but someone else's name on the final product. A big block paves the way to pay dirt, or pressure on the QB forces an interception. And the only guys in the huddle who know your work, and maybe some football games, they might get it too." One player described a large bruise on the bottom of his foot and can only shrug when asked how he received it. Sore legs and newly discovered injuries greet them every morning, after every practice, after every game. Bottom line, it's a meat grinder, and Hermiston continues. Linemen don't get plays off. They don't get hit only when they run the football or when they get sacked or catch a pass over the middle. They don't use their bodies like battering rams, only when the running back comes in their direction, or the coach calls for a blitz. Linemen get hit every single play. But why? It's mostly pride. Senior Lars Anderson, 6'1", lean 205 pounds. It's more like a fullback than a tight end. He said the main motivating force in the trenches, actually playing on the line, isn't that great. But once you achieve what you've been working for so hard, then it's a pretty good feeling. For Paul, that great feeling was advancing the gospel. To live was Christ, and to die was gain. You know, there are passages where Paul's not sure if he's going to live or die. But he knew that to live was Christ and to die was gain, so it didn't matter. The situation that Paul found himself was intended by God to advance the gospel. What about you? Where are you today? Are you in a situation that has caused your discomfort? Are you feeling like you need to sit out this play? Are you feeling like you are in the trenches? Your trench is not in Rome. Your trench is in your home, in the midst of your family, or in the place of work, in the midst of your coworkers. Your trench is right where you are right now, right where you will be going on Monday or Tuesday morning. Can you trust your coach to call the right play? Will you advance the gospel? But pastor, you might say, no one wants to hear what I have to say. Often I discover nobody wants to hear what I have to say either. I could preach the gospel all day and accomplish nothing. So let's read a little bit further. Philippians 13 and 14. So that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. We just read what was going on with Paul, how he had gotten there, the experience, the beatings, the stoning. I know that that doesn't sound encouraging in and of itself. But doesn't it whisper to you to come into the trenches? You know, when you advance the gospel, when you speak the gospel, you encourage your brothers and sisters. During his imprisonment, Paul was chained to a soldier. He was free to go about an apartment that he had to pay for and furnish. He was free to go out and buy the things that he needed. But all the time, he was chained to a soldier. Probably a member of the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard were the elite of the elite. Not only were they responsible for the protection of the emperor, but historically, they even chose some of the emperors and established them in their positions. Additionally, every Roman soldier at the time took an oath, the sacramentum, that rendered them given to the gods. This is why this is what prevented Christians from becoming soldiers in those days. It was this oath that said that the Praetorian Guard was given to the gods of Rome. And one of those guards was chained to Paul. Do you think that guard was ripe for evangelization? Do you think that guard went home and said, family, we've got to accept the Messiah? I just heard why this guy, well, I guess he couldn't go home because he was chained. But you get what I'm saying. Anyway, I'd like to introduce you to Paul. Sorry, I digress. Alright, now I gotta find the right way. Several summers ago, I was at my grandfather's house on Lake Ponderay. My grandfather has a dock that goes out into the lake, and when I was young, he put a high dive on that dock so that we could jump into the lake from altitude. And I remember I had cousins, and we grew up every summer on that lake. And I remember the high dive, getting up on top of that high dive and looking down and going, oh my gosh, that is a long way. And you know, when you're a group of friends, there's always one. There's always one. No fear whatsoever. And they just jump. Big splash, they come out of the water, they say, you can do it. They go up the high dive, they kind of push you to the side, they jump again. And they say, you can do it. And eventually everybody jumps, but there's always that one person who's hesitant. It takes them forever. Now I say recently I was at the lake watching because I also got to see my nieces and nephews go through this same process. And it's neat to see generationally as the next generation encourages one another to jump off of that high dive. Paul's actions were encouraging his brothers and sisters in the same way. He had jumped off that high dive, so to speak. He was advancing the gospel even in the midst of his adversity. 7 times in 4 epistles, Paul takes deliberate action, or specifically tells his audience to be encouraged. But that's only the beginning. My brothers and sisters first told me to jump, but it wasn't until they jumped that encouragement was made complete. It's scary, I know. I think personally it's easier for me to stand up here and encourage you and tell you that you should go and advance the gospel than it is for me to go out and advance the gospel. The high dive is the same. There's that moment when we've got to jump. It's scary. It's scary because there are real risks. Among those risks are the people who do not wish us well. That's the third thing that we can pull from this passage. Paul says in verses 15 to 16 to 17, some indeed preach from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. The later do it out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my punishment. Paul is preaching the gospel to a soldier in a royal household that are not just opposed to hearing the gospel, but to whom the gospel is diametrically opposed and illegal. Illegal at the potential cost of his life. In Jerusalem, it punishable by death to violate God's law. And that was the charge against Paul there. And now he was going to go to Rome and proclaim that Christ was the king. In Rome, it was punishable by death to proclaim anyone other than Caesar as king, to proclaim that Jesus was king, to advance the Gospels, to be in opposition to Rome. Paul was opposed by people who were proclaiming the gospel with the intent to condemn Paul. Can you imagine? Anthony is proclaiming the gospel. I think we should stone him. Well, that's great, right? But what is the gospel? Well, the gospel is that Christ is king. Oh, yes, we should probably stone him. That's the fear. There are people who are opposed to us. One of my great privileges in the Army was to command a company of tanks. I'm an avid shooter. I've got my gun safe with my rifles, my ammunition. I love to go out and shoot. But it kind of doesn't taste the same anymore because I got to go to a range where I was responsible for a 120 millimeter cannon and 3 machine guns. My little pea, it doesn't matter how big a gun I've got in my safe, it's a pea shooter compared to that. I was talking to a buddy of mine who commanded the 3rd Battalion at the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California, and he said, Aaron, I got to give the command for the entire battalion to open fire. So there I was in command of this company, and it culminated with a 28-day gunnery cycle. I've got 14 tanks. Each one has 4 people in it. But they're brand new. I've got to screen them to make sure that they're going to work. That's in addition to doing the gunnery cycle. So now I've got 110% of a job. And I've only got 60% of the people. I don't know why people don't want to sign up to fire a 120 millimeter cannon. It's beyond me. I think there would be a line at the door, but there's not. We only got 60%. The day before our qualifying, I poured myself into it. They weren't going to fail because of me. And the day before the qualifying run, when we went and got our grade by the active duty, I did not do so well. I was looking at the board and I could see not only was I not doing well, but nobody was doing well. The entire company was going to fail. It was then that I heard the laughter. And I'm standing here, I've got my Army gear on, I haven't slept for days, I'm dirty. My executive officer is gone from a family emergency, and so I'm having to do additional work. I've got 60% people, so I'm having to do additional work. I've got a soldier who is in the hospital because he attempted to commit suicide. And now I'm looking at the board, and I don't think we're even going to pass. And I hear somebody laughing. And I'm too tired to even move my head, so they didn't mean for me to hear them, but I could hear them. There were 2 full-bird colonels there, and they were laughing because we were headed for failure. And that was a good thing for them. It was a good thing for them because they didn't think that the state of Oregon deserved those tanks. They were brand new, state-of-the-art. There were 49 other states that wanted them. And if we failed, they were going to give them to somebody that they thought was more deserving. I didn't have time to be heartbroken, and I didn't want to tell my soldiers that we were expected to fail. So I just went back to my soldiers and I said, guys, we've got to do this. Here's where I'm struggling. Where are you struggling? And we worked it out. The next day, every crew passed their qualification. We had at our disposal a brand new range, simulators, almost 24 hours to be able to get into and figure this out. We had contractors who had built and worked on the new tank come to us to answer our questions. All of that was given to us so that when we failed, it would be our failure. They couldn't point to the resourcing and say it was a resource failure. But we were expected to fail nonetheless. That's where Paul is. Paul has been sent to Rome by people who are expecting him to die. Before he had gone to Jerusalem, Agabus had prophesied by taking Paul's belt and binding himself with it, signifying that Paul would be bound in Jerusalem and delivered into the hands of the Gentiles. Before Agabus, Paul knew in the spirit that he had to go to Jerusalem. He was aware that he would be put in chains and was prepared even to die for Jesus in Jerusalem. What he didn't know was that because he went to Jerusalem, he would be taken all the way to Rome and given the opportunity to present the gospel to Caesar and Caesar's household. The Judaizers wanted Paul to fail, so they made false allegations against him. It was these false allegations that required Paul to make a defense of himself. His defense was the opportunity to present that gospel. The Roman household had to say, "Why are you here, Paul?" Paul had to say, "Because of Jesus." There will always be people who want to see you fail. They will even tell the truth to get you to fail. They will say and do anything to bring you down for their own gain. If it wasn't for those colonels committing the support so that we could fail, we would have never even had the opportunity to be successful. If it wasn't for the Judaizers' false allegations against Paul, he would have had the opportunity to present the gospel. Often we are discouraged by those who are against us. But what if God orchestrated that opposition to give you an opportunity to do His work? The coach is on the sideline in the heavens, calling the plays. Aaron, they're against you. But they're against you so that you can do my work. Don't worry about the people who are against you. God has got them under control. So let's move on to the fourth thing. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. We can know that our situation is not only for us to advance the gospel, but it has been designed by God to advance the gospel. Where you are is no accident. Who your parents are is no accident. Who your kids are is no accident. All of that friction that goes in those relationships is no accident. All of it was designed by God for you to advance the gospel. Paul wrote that everything works for the good of those who love Him. Everything, to include false allegations. To include those moments when our bodies are failing. To include those moments when the bodies of our friends and loved ones are failing. My friend, we used to meet every Saturday in a men's Bible study in Ellensburg. And I forget his last name. Robert. He stopped coming to the Bible study, and so I asked him, "Hey, what's going on, man? I miss you." His wife was dying of cancer. And he said, "Aaron, I am going to be beside my wife every moment I can, taking care of her needs, making her as comfortable as I can. God has called me to do that. So I won't be at church, and I won't be at the Bible study. My finances have been orchestrated so I don't have to worry about anything. I just have to take care of her." I wish I could say that her body was miraculously healed and that she recovered, but she went home to be with the Lord. And in the midst of the sadness that Robert felt at her loss was this tremendous joy that he could be there for every moment. They talked about God together. They talked about Jesus. They talked about their salvation. They talked about their kids. They talked about the life that they had shared together. And when it was all done, Robert said, "Aaron, all of this was designed by God. I never planned any moment of this, and I wouldn't trade it for the world." Do you trust the play that the coach is calling? Will you sacrifice your body for that play, knowing that there's another one coming? I got the experience of owning a rental. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And when the renter left, it was always a mess, and so I always had to recruit my family at no pay to come and help me clean it up. And my sister always she wants to instill a work ethic in her boys, and I'll never forget Gage. Jackson is the little one. We had him in a sweatshirt, we had taped his arms closed, we put rubber gloves on him that were so big we had to stretch him all the way up to his elbows. He had a mask on, and goggles on, and then he had this zipped so tight that even with the mask and the goggles, he looked like a Jawa from Star Wars. And we sent him into the cupboards with a bottle of bleach. Said, dude, don't come out until it's clean. Oh my gosh, it was nasty down there. We'd bring him out, make sure he was still breathing. My nephew Ryan, he's the oldest. He was painted. And he's a typical teenage boy. Details are not his thing. There's paint on it, it's good enough. And it drips all over the floor. And his mom was scolding him. Keep it off the floor. Keep it off the floor. And I told his mom and my sister, I said, hey, I haven't done the carpet yet. I'm going to do the carpet. We're ripping it out. We're going to replace it. I'm doing it in this order so that we don't have to worry about the paint falling off of it. And my sister scolded me. She said, Aaron, it's not about the paint. It's about them doing the job right. I don't want them to just do the job. I want them to do the job right. And I said, okay, fine. We won't get paint on the carpet. And those boys complained and complained and complained and complained. But what they don't know is that their mom and dad were instilling in them skills that they would need later on in life. Things that were truly valuable. Our God is the same way with us. Do we trust that when He calls the play, that it's not only for the benefit of a lost and dying world, but it's also for our own benefit? We will be made complete in the process of doing what it is that He asks us to do. Paul knew that his situation was not about his comfort or even his own justice. His situation was about advancing the gospel. And Paul defines the gospel in 1 Corinthians, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that He was buried, that He was raised on the third day in accordance with those same Scriptures. And God had orchestrated His life in such a way that He had to present that to Rome. The heart of Paul's defense is that Jesus came to fulfill those Scriptures, not to abolish them. That His kingdom was not of this world, in the sense that Caesar's was. Paul was a Pharisee of Pharisees. Nobody could explain the law to a Gentile world like Paul. You ever wonder why Peter was called to the Jews and Paul was called to the Gentiles? The Jews already needed the law, or knew the law, so Peter could fumble his way through that. We in the Gentile world, we have no idea what the meaning of the Old Testament is. Paul wrote the majority of the New Testament just explaining what that meant to Gentiles like us. He was designed to do what God had called him to do. What are you uniquely qualified to do? What quality do you possess that qualifies you to speak where you are today? Have you walked through a hardship or a difficulty that lends you credibility in the heart of the one that you were talking to? How has God orchestrated your life to bring that quality to where it is today? Do you believe that He has done so? Believe today, church, that you are right where God has designed you to be, so that this message can be advanced. How easy would it have been for Paul to have missed that opportunity by complaining about his situation? It was precisely in this understanding that Paul asks a rhetorical question that brings us to my fifth and final point. If we are past time, I blame Susan. All right. Philippians 1:18. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. Yes, I will rejoice. What then? The Greek word that Paul uses here for rejoice is kiro. It's a verb. It means an action, to be full of cheer, calmly happy. I like that, calmly happy. That appeals to me. I joke with Pastor Eric all the time. Pastor Eric, this is me very angry. Pastor Eric, this is me very excited. Pastor Eric, this is me scared to death. Calmly happy. That's what Paul is telling us to be. When Paul is saying that he will rejoice, he is saying that it is something he will do, an action that he will take. But he's not just deciding to rejoice, he's also encouraging the Philippians by reminding them why he can rejoice. One more nephew story has to do with Easter. It was here in town at a local church. There were 10,000 eggs out for an Easter egg hunt. Each one with a little piece of chocolate in it. And my sister was taking her boys to this Easter egg hunt. But there were two specific Easter eggs that were camouflaged in color. And if you had that Easter egg in your basket, you got a free PlayStation. Even I would be hunting for that egg. So my nephews take off, and my sister stays with the youngest because she can't keep up with the oldest. And there are thousands of kids spread out across this field picking up Easter eggs. When it's all done, my youngest, Gage, he's got 100 or 200 eggs in his basket, and there's already a chocolate mustache beginning to form. But here comes Ryan, and I'm going to cry telling this story because it's so adorable. Here comes Ryan, and he's got no eggs in his basket. None. And his mom says, Ryan, where are your eggs? And Ryan says, Mom, I couldn't find the camo egg. What is it that caused Ryan to ignore every single chocolate-filled egg? It was the value that was in the egg that he was looking for. That PlayStation to him was more valuable than any piece of chocolate on that field. Christians, we can rejoice because we've already been given the camouflage egg. The righteousness that is Christ's is ours. And because of that righteousness, we stand to inherit an eternal kingdom. Nothing compares to that value. Jesus tells us the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. The kingdom of God can only be accessed through Jesus and what he accomplished on the cross. This is the good news. This is the good news that we bring to a dying world. This is the good news that we accepted, that brought us here this morning to rejoice. Do you remember that feeling when you accepted Jesus for the first time? There's only one thing that compares to it. Being involved in the process that Jesus uses to bring somebody else to him. We talk about the reward of our jobs, we talk about the reward of our families. Pale in comparison to the reward we will receive through Jesus Christ. And that is what we offer a lost and dying world. Our fear to preach the gospel at home and at work comes from our inability or our refusal to recognize that value. Do you know the value of your salvation? Alright, one more niece and nephew story. My nephew was building blocks. His older brother was mad, came through, kicked the blocks over. Of course, my younger nephew cried to his dad. Dad brought the two nephews together and made the older nephew apologize to the younger nephew. And me being a theology student, I was watching this going, you know, it's interesting. He didn't make my nephew apologize to the blocks. He kicked the blocks. He made my nephew apologize to the Creator. We owe a against the Creator. When I offend against you, yeah, the world will tell me that I need to go and apologize to you and all is good. But I have not. I have offended against an eternal Creator. In order for me to pay that off, it has to be an eternal price that I can't afford. That's why Jesus had to come. He is eternal. He paid the price. He is sufficient because He is eternal. Do you know the value of your salvation? The Creator of the universe came to a cross to say, you and you belong to me, and I want you in eternity. Do you know how much that infuriates Satan? Because he didn't say it to Satan. That's the value of the gospel. That's the value of your salvation. That's the value of what you share with the lost and dying world. Jesus died on the cross that we might be saved into the kingdom of heaven. So there's my 5 things. You can advance the gospel. You can encourage your brothers and sisters. Don't worry about your opposition. God's got that under control. Where you are was designed to advance the gospel. And in every way proclaim Christ and rejoice because of the value of what it is that you are proclaiming. Would you bow your heads with me, please? There are some here this morning who can't yet be encouraged by this message. You may not yet know that you are a sinner and in need of salvation. I need you to know that you're in an untenable situation. There's a clock. That clock is going to run out. One day you will stand before a perfect judge and be found completely and utterly wanting. If that is you, I have good news. We serve a loving God who has made a way for you to stand in His presence, completely righteous and no longer in danger of His awesome judgment. He has made a way for your forgiveness. David was a murderer. Solomon was a murderer. Moses was a murderer. They were all commended for their faith. If today you are being called before the Lord, if you are being called to Christ, and you don't know what to do, I want you to just lift your head up and look at me right now. Don't wait. My hope is that every one of us here has already accepted the Lord. But if not, I am here to tell you how to enter eternity in peace. And if today you can't look up, for whatever reason, that's okay. I want you to come up to me and I want you to use this word, 2 words, broken arrow. I will stop what I'm doing and we will talk. For the rest of us, those of us who already are living under His care, have we forgotten the value of what He has done for us? Have we begun to focus on worthless things at the expense of the lost world that we encounter each day? We can't wait either. Let's put God's work in the forefront of our awareness. Let's pursue His work wherever we are. And when we do so, wherever we are, we will be able to rejoice. Lord, I thank you so much for today. I thank you so much for what it is that you have done for us. And Lord, to be here, alive and on this planet, is to be about your work. And to not be here is to be in your presence in eternity. Lord, how can we lose? What can stand against us? What can stand in our way? Lord, I just pray over the congregation right now that you would send them a spirit of courage, that they would be able to proclaim your love to a lost and dying world in the weeks to come. All of this we pray in precious name. Amen. All right.